Shalom. This week we will be reading Parashat B'reishith, in the beginning. We begin reading and studying the Torah from the beginning again, literally from the beginning of everything, from the beginning of creation. We read the first verses of this Torah portion in the beginning of God's creation of the heavens and the earth. The earth was astonishingly empty, and darkness was on the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the face of the water. And God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. And God saw the light, that it was good, and God separated between the light and between the darkness. And God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. And it was evening, and it was morning, one day. You know, the first Torah portion encompasses the greatest and the most fundamental concepts. How God brought forth all of creation, all of reality from nothing. The 6 days of creation and Shabbat, the creation of Adam and Chava in the Garden of Eden, their event and subsequent banishment. And by the time we reach the end of the Torah portion, as the verse states, the wickedness of man that was great upon the earth and God's disappointment. And you know, we could spend a lifetime on each of these concepts and barely scratch the surface. As you know, the Torah's first 5 books of Moses are divided into weekly portions, and that weekly cycle, we believe, is the story of man. It is the story of our as yet unfolding lives. We experience this restart each year, and we never tire of it. It is an amazing experience, because each year we have the opportunity to uncover more of the Torah's mysteries, to delve deeper and deeper into its secrets as we mature, both age-wise as well as intellectually and spiritually. We can see deeper, hopefully, and this in turn helps us to serve God better, meaning, first and foremost, to become better people. And it's an amazing experience, but also, I have to tell you, this transition from the end of Deuteronomy to begin the Torah again, to begin with Genesis, it's somewhat elusive. It's hard to pin down. It's hard to really get a grasp on, because after all, we've been so thoroughly immersed in these books, in this cycle, the last 4 Torah portions of the book of Deuteronomy alone having taken place on the day of Moshe's death, his passing, and he reiterating so many times his concern for the people of Israel and the pitfalls that lay in wait for them in the future, and the challenges that they will constantly face, most of them as a result of their own insubordination. But you know, there is actually an amazing connection, a bridge, between the conclusion of Deuteronomy and the beginning of Genesis, between the very last verse of the last parsha of Dvarim, V'zot HaBracha, and the restart of the Torah in Parashat B'reishith. And I think this is one of the deepest things in the world. If we look back for a moment at the last verse in last week's Torah portion, actually the Torah portion that we read on Simchat Torah, when we concluded the Torah, V'zot HaBracha, you know, this is how that Torah portion, the last one in Devarim, this is how it concludes. Read the last few verses. And Moses, the servant of the Lord, died there in the land of Moab by the mouth of the Lord. And he, meaning God, buried him in the valley in the land of Moab, opposite Beit Peor. And no person knows the place of his burial unto this day. Moshe was 120 years old when he died. His eye had not dimmed, nor had he lost his freshness. And the sons of Israel wept for Moshe in the plains of Moab for 30 days. And the days of weeping over the mourning for Moshe came to an end. And Joshua the son of Nun was full of the spirit of wisdom, because Moshe had laid his hands upon him. And the children of Israel obeyed him, and they did as the Lord had commanded Moshe. And there was no other prophet who arose in Israel like Moses, whom the Lord knew face to face, as manifested by all the signs and wonders which the Lord had sent him to perform in the land of Egypt, to Pharaoh and all his servants and to all his land, and all the strong hand. This is the last verse now, the last verse of the Torah, verse 12. And all the strong hand and all the great awe which Moshe performed before the eyes of all Israel. Those are the last words of the Torah. Anew kol Yisrael, before the eyes of all of Israel. And then, as we do when we conclude each of the 5 books of the Torah in the community reading, we all recite Chazak, Chazak, v'nitchazek. Be strong, and be strengthened. So the last words that we hear are Anew kol Yisrael, before the eyes of all of Israel. Now, what is this all about? These last verses, this is the summary of Moshe's life, and indeed, this verse 12, Rashi cites the tradition in order to understand this verse. So what are these words? And all the strong hand. He says this alludes to Moshe's receiving the Torah into his hands, and all the great awe is a reference to the miracles and great deeds in the fearsome desert. And the last words, the very last words of the Torah, which Moshe performed before the eyes of all of Israel, refers to the idea that Moshe got to break the tablets before the eyes of all of Israel, as it is stated, and I broke them before your eyes, earlier in chapter 9 and verse 17, to which the Holy One, blessed be He, agreed. This idea that Moshe got to break the first tablets when he came down from the mountain and saw what was going on. What is all this about? Understand the relationship that all of Israel had with Moshe Rabbeinu, Moses, our master, our teacher. It's unparalleled. We know of his great compassion and boundless love to the point of ultimate self-sacrifice for his people. He was completely without ego, to the point where the Almighty himself bears witness and states, and Moshe was the humblest man upon the face of the earth, right? That's in Numbers 12 and verse 3. And of course, the proof that that statement is true, that Moshe was the humblest man upon the face of the earth, is that it says it. Because who transcribed this? You know, who dictated the Torah to whom and told who to write these words? God dictated to Moses, okay, now write these words. And Moshe was the humblest person upon the face of the earth. And then Moshe continued to the next topic. In other words, before Moshe wrote down those words, and afterwards, after hearing that compliment from the Creator, he was the same person. It had no effect on him whatsoever, made no difference to him, and that's why it was a true statement. And this is the man, don't forget, who was ready to die, to have never existed in the first place, in order to save his people, as he stated after the incident of the golden calf. If you forgive them, okay, but if not, erase my name from your book that you have written, Exodus 32:32. This is the Moshe who brought us the 10 plagues. This is the Moshe who brought us out of Egypt. This is the Moshe who ascended to Mount Sinai and brought down the Torah, who on 2 separate occasions neither ate nor drank for 40-day stretches. He faced down the spies and Korach and the kings of Ammon and Moab, defeated Sichon and Og. And after all those adventures and all that travail and all that spiritual hope and longing and accomplishment, it's all summed up. And the last words of the Torah, which presumably comprise what we should be remembering about Moshe forever, the main thing that he would like to be remembered for, what the Torah wants us to remember him for, what he did for the people of Israel, that will remain with them forever, that he delivered us from the house of bondage? No. That he received the Torah? No. That he broke the tablets with his 2 hands in front of all of Israel. That, we are told here, is the ultimate thing that Moshe did before the eyes of all of Israel. That's how we should remember him. This is an amazing idea. And the question of why this is how the Torah concludes, with an allusion to the breaking of the tablets, the question is strengthened even more when we begin to study deep teachings about the differences between the first tablets and the second tablets. First 2 tablets, which were written with the finger of God, that could be read the same from both sides, about which many miracles are related, represented a very high spiritual level. And according to our sages, if those first original tablets would not have been broken, the spiritual level of Israel would have been on a much higher level. The knowledge of Torah would have been more accessible, to the extent that our sages famously teach, they state, that no one would ever have forgotten anything that they ever learned. And this doesn't just refer to text. it refers to everything that Torah really is, which is life experience. It would have been a completely different level of knowledge. The knowledge would have been anchored in such a deep way that it would never be forgotten. And according to the sages, when Moshe descended and witnessed how Israel, under the influence and at the instigation of the mixed multitude, he witnessed how they were reveling around the golden calf. The holy letters on the tablets, this is what the Midrash states, they were written by God himself. Those letters, disgusted at the scene, flew off the tablets, flew back up to heaven. The letters flew away, and the stones, empty of that divine content, became unbearably heavy in his hands. So we read in 32:19, it happened, this is back in Exodus Parashat Kitisa, chapter 32 and verse 19, we read, it happened, as he drew near the camp and saw the calf and the dances, that Moshe's anger flared up. He threw down the tablets from his hands and shattered them at the foot of the mountain. Now that is what the verse says, but the simple reading of these words couches a great secret. Because you see, even though the verse seems to indicate that this was done in a moment of anger, Moshe did not break the tablets in a fit of anger. Maybe he was angry at the mixed multitude. Maybe he was angry at himself for allowing them to be part of the Exodus. But he didn't break the tablets in a fit of anger, in a momentary reaction. He didn't lose his self-control. Although it was plan B, this was an extremely calculated, well thought out, and specific plan to break those tablets. For the benefit, for the saving of, for the preservation of, for the welfare of his beloved Israel. And God agreed with his decision. And it wasn't a momentary loss. It was the opposite. Breaking the tablets and necessitating the second tablets was a deed of unparalleled importance. And indeed, as the last verse of Parashat B'reishith, the last verse of the last Torah portion in the book of Deuteronomy, indicates, before the eyes of all of Israel, it was possibly the most important thing that Moshe ever did, and that which he and the Torah wishes us to remember. If the original tablets had not been broken, things would have been different, all right. We would never have forgotten a simple thing, a single thing. Our ability to facilitate the ultimate rectification of the human condition would have been very great. But people being who they are, and such an expectation would not have been realistic. And Moshe realized that when he saw what was going on. Moshe came down and saw what he saw, the incidents of the golden calf. He realized with great compassion and with the deepest insight that things cannot be rushed. Life knowledge needs time, and everything needs to happen a little bit at a time, and things can't be forced. We need to fix things. We need to fix ourselves a little bit at a time, a little bit every year. And all things that transpire in the life of a human being, all the things that we have to go through, are all necessary along our road. And there are disappointments, but a person cannot allow himself to become despondent and hung up on disappointments. Every time a person falls, he has to get up. And if a person would obsess about past mistakes and failures, it would be so overwhelming that we would never be able to get up. And therefore, we have what the sages call the blessing of being able to gain perspective and forget and move forward. And this aspect of forgetting, which is very positive, is actually referred to as the holiness of forgetting. And the deepest lesson here is that that ability to forget, to start all over again, to move forward, comes from Moshe breaking the tablets. Before, we wouldn't have forgotten, but we would have been stuck. And now we can. And now when we strive to fix, we strive for knowledge, we strive to improve ourselves, the work is harder, but the personal acquisition of the level of Torah becoming part of us is more real and more anchored and more lasting and more internal. And this is exactly the secret of why we conclude reading the Torah portions of Devarim during the high holy days of judgment and immediately begin again with B'reishith, with Genesis, because just as the year is brand new, so all of creation is renewed, and every person is renewed and able to start again no matter what we go through, no matter what last year was, no matter what our previous conception of the Torah was. We are always able to start again, realizing, I don't really know anything at all. That's how I'm able to start B'reishith all over again, because I'm just starting out now. How do I start reading about creation all over again? Because I am just being created now, anew. The year is just being created anew. The whole thing, the whole world is being created anew. I forget everything I knew because it's a new year, and whatever I knew is no longer relevant because I am a new person, and we never ever fall into despair or get stuck. And this is all included in the wisdom of Moshe breaking the tablets, enabling each of us to start again and forget the mistakes of the past, and whatever happened and whatever I knew before used to go like that, and now it goes like this. And the last thing that we read when we conclude the Torah is that this is what Moshe did before the eyes of all of Israel, referring to the fact that he broke the tablets. And then immediately, that very day on Simchat Torah, we start reading the Torah from the beginning. And this is exactly what the teshuvah, the repentance of Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, and the joy of Sukkot is all about. That's why every year at this time, we conclude the Torah and start again, because in God's great kindness, everything is reset. And as we conclude Devarim and begin B'reishith over again, the year concludes, and the last year's conceptions conclude, and the new year begins, and whatever happened in the past is in the past. And now we go forward, and it's because Moshe had the foresight to take this initiative, break the tablets, realize this is not going to work for these people. They're going to have to do things at their own pace. They're going to have to work very hard, but it has to be real for them. And that's why we're able to begin again and strive with all our being to become real people and work at it relentlessly and never give up and constantly begin again, just as God constantly doesn't give up on creation, renews creation, enabling and empowering us to become new people. We need to believe and know in our hearts this week and always this week as we begin creation all over again. We need to know that everything is constantly new. And God is constantly renewing everything, and no day is like the previous one, and no year has to be like the previous one, and whatever we thought we knew, we are starting over again with God's help this new year to become completely new.